Joseph Merrick, famously known as the Elephant Man, was born in 1862 in Leicester, England. He suffered from severe physical deformities caused by a rare condition, likely Proteus syndrome or neurofibromatosis. Merrick's skull grew to an enormous size, with a large, tumor-like mass covering part of his face, distorting his features and rendering one eye useless. His lips and jaw were enlarged, and one arm became grossly oversized and immobile. His skin was thick, lumpy, and resembled the hide of an elephant. Despite being intelligent and sensitive, Merrick was forced to work in freak shows due to his appearance. Audiences were both horrified and fascinated. Later in life, he was taken in by Dr. Frederick Treves and given shelter at the London hospital, where he lived his final years with some dignity. Merrick died in 1890, likely from asphyxiation caused by the weight of his head while lying down. His life became a symbol of human dignity, overshadowed by physical suffering. Julia Pastrana was born in 1834 in Mexico and became known worldwide as the Bearded Lady, or the Ape Woman. She suffered from a rare condition called hypertrichosis terminalis, which caused thick black hair to grow all over her face and body. Additionally, she had gingival hyperplasia, which made her lips and gums extremely thick and protruding, giving her face a swollen, distorted appearance. Her mouth and jaw were misshapen, and her voice was described as coarse and guttural, though her facial features led many to describe her as monstrous or ape-like. Julia was intelligent, multilingual, and musically talented. She was exhibited across Europe and the U.S. as a freak show attraction. Tragically, her manager, who later became her husband, profited from her condition, even having her body embalmed and displayed after her death in 1860 during childbirth. Julia Pastrana's story is one of exploitation and dehumanization. Her facial difference was so extreme by 19th century standards that she was viewed more as a spectacle than a person. Only in the 21st century did her remains finally return to Mexico for a dignified burial. Mary Ann Bevan was born in London in 1874. She lived a normal life into adulthood, working as a nurse and marrying a farmer with whom she had 4 children. However, in her early 30s, Mary developed acromegaly, a hormonal disorder caused by excessive growth hormone, often due to a tumor in the pituitary gland. The disease gradually disfigured her face and body. Her once symmetrical features became enlarged and distorted. Her forehead protruded, her jaw and nose thickened dramatically, and her facial muscles stiffened into a hardened, coarse appearance. Her hands and feet grew abnormally large, and she suffered from headaches, joint pain, and failing vision. After the death of her husband, Mary entered a Ugliest Woman contest to support her children and won, which led to her being featured in sideshows, including Barnum and Bailey's Circus in the U.S. Despite being exploited for her looks, she remained dignified and resilient. Mary Ann Bevan's face became a symbol of public ridicule. Yet her story reflects courage, sacrifice, and the cruelty of societal standards based solely on appearance. Stefan Bibrowski, known to the world as Lionel the Lion-Faced Man, was born in Poland in 1890 with a rare condition called hypertrichosis lanuginosa, also known as werewolf syndrome. This disorder caused long, thick hair to grow across his entire face and body, up to 8 inches in some areas, giving him the appearance of a lion or wild animal. From an early age, Stefan was viewed not as a child, but as a freak of nature. His mother reportedly considered him cursed and gave him up to a showman, who raised him and exhibited him in Europe and later in the United States. His face was almost entirely hidden beneath dense hair, including his forehead, cheeks, nose, and chin, with only his lips and eyes barely visible. Audiences were both fascinated and disturbed by his appearance. Despite his image as a wild man, Lionel was highly intelligent, articulate, and kind. He spoke multiple languages and was known for his gentle personality. He spent much of his career with Barnum and Bailey and died in Berlin in 1932. His case remains one of the most iconic examples of how rare physical conditions were turned into public entertainment. Fedor Jevtuko was born in Russia in 1868 with congenital hypertrichosis, a condition that caused thick hair to grow uncontrollably over his face and body. Inherited from his father, who also had the disorder, Fedor's face was completely covered in dense, dark hair, with only his eyes, nose, and lips exposed. His appearance closely resembled that of a dog or wolf, leading to his infamous stage name, Jojo, the dog-faced boy. Discovered at a young age by a European promoter, Fedor was brought to the United States and signed by P.T. Barnum. In the sideshows, he was costumed in primitive outfits and encouraged to bark, growl, and act like a wild animal to heighten the spectacle. Audiences were amazed and horrified in equal measure by his canine-like features, thick facial fur, and childlike demeanor. However, behind the stage persona, Fedor was reportedly quiet, intelligent, and uncomfortable with the character he was forced to portray. His story reflects how people with unique appearances were dehumanized and commodified for profit. Fedor died at just 36 years old in 1904. Though his face drew global attention, his humanity was often overshadowed by spectacle. Edward Mordrake is a figure shrouded in myth and mystery, often cited as a 19th-century English nobleman afflicted with one of the most disturbing deformities ever recorded. According to lore, he was born with a second face on the back of his head, a parasitic twin face that could not eat or speak, but was said to smile, frown, and whisper terrible things to him at night. Descriptions of the second face vary, but most accounts suggest it was fully formed with eyes, nose, and a moving mouth. Unlike his noble and handsome front-facing appearance, the back face was said to be twisted, sinister, and demonic in expression. Edward reportedly begged doctors to remove it, claiming it tormented him constantly, but no one dared attempt the operation. Driven mad by his condition and the psychological horror it caused, Mordrake is said to have taken his own life in his 20s. While there is no verified medical record of his existence, the story has endured for over a century, symbolizing both the grotesque fascination with deformity and the mental anguish that can accompany extreme physical abnormality. Edward Mordrake remains a haunting legend of duality, both in face and fate. Schlitzie, often billed as the Pinhead, was a sideshow performer born in 1901, most likely in the Bronx, New York. His real name is uncertain, possibly Simon Metz or Schlitzie Surtees, and much of his early life remains undocumented. Schlitzie had microcephaly, a neurological condition where the brain and skull are abnormally small, resulting in a tiny cone-shaped head, sloping forehead, narrow jaw, and severe intellectual disability. Because of his condition, Schlitzie's appearance was perceived as highly unusual. His face retained childlike proportions into adulthood, with a wide smile, vacant gaze, and exaggerated expressions. He was very short, about 4 feet tall, and usually dressed in frilly, feminine garments, both to attract attention and emphasize his childlike appearance. His high-pitched voice and erratic behavior only added to the perception of him as otherworldly in a cruelly exploitative entertainment industry. Despite being portrayed as a human oddity, Schlitzie was known for his joyful demeanor and love of dancing. He spent much of his life performing in circuses and sideshows, most famously appearing in the controversial 1932 film Freaks. Though often misunderstood, Schlitzie became a beloved figure among performers. His appearance challenged perceptions of beauty and normalcy in deeply uncomfortable ways. Prince Randian, also known as the human torso, or the Snake Man, was born in 1871 in British Guiana, modern-day Guyana. He was born with tetra amelia syndrome, a rare congenital condition that results in the absence of all four limbs. Randian had no arms or legs, yet became one of the most famous sideshow performers of the early 20th century. His physical appearance was profoundly striking, a fully formed head and torso, but no appendages whatsoever. To audiences unfamiliar with such conditions, his body resembled that of a human worm or caterpillar. He often performed while wrapped in cloth that enhanced the impression of serpentine movement. His face, too, was visually distinctive, broad and often expressionless, with a thick mustache and a stoic demeanor. Despite his extreme physical limitations, Randian was remarkably capable. He could roll cigarettes with his lips, shave himself, write using his mouth, and move with agility by wiggling his torso. He was featured in the 1932 cult film Freaks, where he famously lit his own cigarette unaided. Prince Randian's life defied assumptions about disability, though his appearance ensured he was often treated as a spectacle rather than a man. He died in 1934, leaving behind a legacy of both resilience and exploitation. Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec was a brilliant French painter and illustrator, born into aristocracy in 1864. While celebrated for his groundbreaking artwork capturing Parisian nightlife, he was also known for his highly unusual physical appearance, a result of a rare genetic disorder likely caused by inbreeding among French nobility. Henri fractured both of his legs as a teenager, and due to pycnodysostosis, a genetic bone disease, his legs never fully healed or grew again. This left him with a normal-sized torso, but abnormally short, thin legs. He stood just 4 feet 11 inches, 1.5 meters, tall, and walked with an awkward gait. His adult face was often described as disproportionate, a prominent nose, deep-set eyes, and a receding chin. Combined with his thin, patchy beard and protruding lips, his features were sometimes labeled simian or grotesque by contemporaries. Toulouse-Lautrec's face was further marked by signs of alcoholism and syphilis in later years, which added a pallid, worn-out expression to his already distinctive look. Though he was often mocked for his stature and appearance, Henri used wit, charisma, and unmatched artistic talent to navigate and even dominate the social circles of Bohemian Paris. He died at age 36, but his image, both as man and myth, remains iconic. Robert Wadlow, known as the Alton Giant, holds the record as the tallest man in recorded history, standing at an astonishing 8 feet 11 inches, 2.72 meters, at the time of his death. Born in 1918 in Alton, Illinois, Wadlow suffered from gigantism caused by an overactive pituitary gland that produced excessive growth hormone, resulting in uncontrollable growth throughout his life. While his size was extraordinary, it came with extreme physical challenges and a striking, abnormal appearance. Wadlow's face was long and narrow, with sunken cheeks and a heavy brow that seemed out of proportion to even his massive skull. His hands were enormous, each over a foot in length, and his limbs looked stretched and rigid, giving him a frail, skeletal frame despite his bulk. His movements were slow and deliberate, aided by leg braces and a cane, and his deep voice was as looming as his figure. People often viewed Wadlow with a mix of awe and discomfort. His sheer scale made everyday interactions unnatural. Doors, chairs, and even conversations had to be adapted around him. Though he was polite, soft-spoken, and gentle, his towering presence overshadowed any personal qualities in the public eye. He died at just 22 years old due to an infected leg brace, leaving behind a legacy as both marvel and medical anomaly.